Hey, badass business owners. I'm often asked to help people understand a little bit more about what cost of goods are. So what I thought I would do today is just come up with 10 different things that you probably should know about cost of goods. So the very first thing is obviously, what are cost of goods? Well, cost of goods are basically anything that you need to be able to make or provide a product or service. So what does that exactly mean? Well, basically what cost of goods are going to be the materials you need to be able to make a product. So for example, if you are making t-shirts, you're going to have t-shirts. And if you put things on the t-shirt, then you're going to have the materials you need to put on the t-shirt. Maybe that's vinyl lettering or whatever the case may be. Now, there's also a component to it of labor, because if you just buy a t-shirt and sell a t-shirt, the only cost of goods that you have is the t-shirt. But if you are customizing the t-shirt, you now also have the labor involved in the t-shirt. Hopefully that kind of makes some sense. Now, if you're doing a service, you may or may not have anything that you're giving the customer. So in which case you only have the labor to provide the service. Now, if you happen to, say, install water heaters, you're going to have the water heater, the parts, and the labor to be able to install it. So the best thing to do is to look at when it says what goes into making those cost of goods, it's going to be those things, the items necessary to be able to make or provide the product or service, as well as the labor. Now, some people might ask, well, what about shipping? If I make that t-shirt and I turn around and ship it? Well, the shipping costs will probably be part of those cost of goods, because you cannot get them that product without that particular service. And in a minute, we're going to talk about some things that aren't part of that entire thing. But let's go to the next item. Why are cost of goods even important in the first place? Well, the reason that your cost of goods are important to you is because it's going to give you a baseline as far as the potential profit that you could possibly make. So for example, let's just say you sell something for $10 and your cost of goods total up to about $3. Well, if you're selling it for 10 and your cost of goods are 3, then you know your potential profit is $7. And from that potential profit, you have a bunch of other stuff that you have to pay in order to be able to find out what your final profit is. And we talk about that in a little bit. But the main reason that you need to understand your cost of goods is it's important for you to understand the minimum costs that you are out in order to make or provide that product or service. Which now leads us back to what is cost of goods and what's not cost of goods. You see, you have other things called operational expenses. And that profit that we talked about after you take off your cost of goods is the first thing you're going to pay is the other operational expenses of your business. Because the other operational expenses are going to be the things that you need to be able to operate your business. Very simple, right? For example, you're going to have some advertising expenses because you want to try to get in some clients, right? You're going to have some insurance costs that you're going to have in there. You're going to have probably some, if you have gas or if you have vehicles that you use in your business, it could be uniforms that you have, it could be training materials that you get, just basically everything else that you have to pay for in your business. Those fall under operational expenses. They are not cost of goods. And that's why, for example, even if I take gas for some people might be a cost of goods. If I run a trucking company, I cannot provide my service without that gas to be able to do the trucking. But for the average business owner, it's not a cost of goods. Yes, that just happens to be where your client is, and you just happen to use gas. That's an operational cost in your business. So I know it can get tricky, but the main thing to do is to keep in mind your cost of goods are going to be the things necessary to make or provide that product or service. The others are just the costs of you running your business, and that's why they are considered operational costs. Which leads us to the next thing, which you may have heard of, which is variable costs and fixed costs. Now, a cost of goods can be variable if it changes, okay? Your cost might be variable if it's different pricing at different times. So for example, if you do anything with lumber prices tend to fluctuate. So those can be variable that is in there. But sometimes your fixed costs are going to be something that just for the most part remains the same price at all times, or at least the majority of times. If something has a price increase once a year, I wouldn't call it variable. It pretty much is a fixed cost. A lot of times your labor are a fixed cost as well, just because you're going to pay a certain amount that you tend to do for most people. Usually you run into variable costs and fixed costs more when it comes to your operational expenses, but it can impact your cost of goods, especially if you have the next item, which are seasonal things. So for example, there are some things that just happen to cost more during certain seasons than they do other. Maybe it's the fact that, if I'm making something with, like, say, strawberries, right? Strawberries cost more during certain times of the year than they do in other ones. I don't even know why I thought of strawberries. I don't even like strawberries, but you know what I mean. For some of you, you might have some stuff that has the seasonal variance to it, in which case those would be something that you need to really make sure that you understand your cost of goods during certain seasons than in other seasons. This really comes into play with people that do food, because a lot of times those can be up and down. I mentioned lumber earlier. Those usually are changed by things that are going on in the marketplace, but they do have the ability. So if you happen to be using some materials in your products or service that have a seasonality to it, you need to make sure that you fully understand the impact on your cost of goods during certain times of the year when it's going to impact you. Now, here's something that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to your cost of goods. Your cost of goods actually a lot of times can lead to you having very bad pricing, especially when you don't understand cost of goods and how it plays into your pricing. A lot of people just take their cost of goods alone and use that as the determination as to what they're going to pay or what they're going to price it at for people. And when you do that, a lot of times, for example, people might go, well, my cost of goods is going to be $50. I want to double that because I want to make $50. So I'm going to price it at $100. Well, slow down, Turbo, because like I mentioned, you have operational costs and other things that have to be in consideration. So that's not necessarily a good strategy for you to pricing. And I have some other videos where we talk more about pricing and what needs to be involved in there. But if you are making your sole determination on your pricing based off of your cost of goods, you are setting yourself up for failure. And more than likely, you're probably not including the labor inside of that. And that's also hurting you. So it's really important that you have two parts when it comes to your pricing, because you're going to have bad pricing if you're not including the labor that you need to do. And you're also going to have bad pricing more than likely if you're just randomly using cost of goods as your sole determination. Now, the way some of the people will use it when it comes to their pricing is they might say, my cost of goods typically run 33%. Now I know that my price needs to basically be, my cost of goods are a third of my price. So I know that if I have 3 times that, then I'm going to have better off. So sometimes it does help you when it comes to your pricing. You just need to make sure that you understand the ratios. And that's where knowing your business numbers and knowing your P&L, those things that I talk about on this channel, as well as go into more detail in the course that I have. I really want you to understand how pricing and cost of goods really work together, because it could lead to bad pricing. And we definitely do not want to have that. Now, some people often ask, well, Tammy, I get it. My cost of goods, they're so high. What do I do? How can I reduce those? Well, it's going to be like any kind of expense that you have in your business. The first thing is, are you buying the wrong stuff? Are there better vendors for you to be able to use? Can you source your materials even more? Another thing that a lot of times people don't realize is that they're counting the wrong stuff. So in which case that will reduce your cost of goods if you make sure that the right things are in there. The other thing you can do is look at bulk pricing. Sometimes what will happen is if you buy more of something, you can lower that price, but then you need to make sure that it's balanced out, which will lead to a lot of times where people will mess up their cost of goods with their inventory, because your inventory is the products and stuff that you're buying. And if you're buying a lot of the wrong things, you're going to drive those prices up on your overall cost of goods, because you keep buying material and products that you do not need, and you're just stocking those up, and it's creating a whole nother problem in your inventory. So if you have inventory, you absolutely can learn how to order better. And that's when we start getting into turns, how much we're turning over the inventory, because your cost of goods are the things that you're purchasing for all of this. So sometimes you have cost of goods by individual product, but you also have cost of goods by your entire business and how it impacts your monthly stuff. And inventory and what you're purchasing is a huge part of that, because if you're buying poorly, you're going to definitely be hurting your cost of goods in your business. Now, next up, what would a video be if we don't talk about taxes, and how does that relate to your cost of goods? Well, here's the good thing. Majority of the time, your cost of goods are going to be able to be deductions on your taxes. So it's a great thing. So you want to make sure you capture all those items and things that you're using in your cost of goods, because when you're getting the information to your tax professional, the tax professional is going to ask you, what are your cost of goods? What are the items that are tied to that? and you're going to be able to deduct them. So that's an awesome, great thing, which leads us to the last thing, which has to do with tracking your cost of goods. You have a couple different things you need to keep in mind when you are tracking your cost of goods. One is you need to track and understand your cost of goods per item that you sell, per product that you sell, per service that you have. I can't tell you how many people that I talk to have no idea what their cost of goods are when it comes to the individual products that they have. And a lot of times they don't even know what it is on their services. And that's a bad thing. The other thing is you need to track your overall for your business, because like I said, if you're purchasing products, but you got to buy a bunch of other things to go along with the things you're buying, you are actually increasing your cost of goods overall for your business, because you might be buying X for this actual product that you're selling or service that you're selling, but you also bought all this other stuff that's not, and it's just going to sit on a shelf or throw in your van or whatever the case may be, or sit in your garage. And that also is going to be part of your overall cost of goods for the business. So you want to make sure that you're tracking. And a lot of ways that you can do this is you can have a spreadsheet, a notepad, something that you can have, which is going to help you track your cost of goods when it comes to individual products that you sell or services that you have. And I definitely encourage you to do that. But you also have good bookkeeping. And when you have good bookkeeping, you have the ability in some cases, depending upon what it is, to be able to track it in there. But more importantly, you're tracking your overall cost of goods when it comes to your business, which is why you're going to use something like QuickBooks, which is going to help you be able to track all of your expenses, all your costs, all your sales, and all that good stuff. There's a link below if you're not on QuickBooks already. Yes, you can use a spreadsheet, but I'm telling you, as your business grows, you're going to find that to be harder and harder to do when it comes to the overall business, which is why I say, look, you need to have a good system. Are there other ones out there? Yes, there's other ones that you can do. There's different companies that offer it. I just want you to have some type of bookkeeping system, because it's really important you understand what your cost of goods are in your business. All right. Now, we just went over 10 things. I think it was 10. I guess we'll know if somebody ever goes and counts them out, but I know I'm pretty close on that. But here's the thing. At the end of the day, you need to understand what cost of goods are, what cost of goods aren't, and you need to understand your cost of goods for products that you sell, and you need to understand also for the services that you have, and you need to make sure you account for those items, but also don't forget those labor costs that are involved if you have to make the product or provide a service. Your cost of goods includes the labor. And yes, that includes if it's you. A lot of people don't include themselves in there because they're like, I don't have to pay somebody, Tammy. Why do I have to include myself? Because at some point in your business, hopefully you're going to want to replace yourself as an employee of your business. Plus, you need to make sure that you are priced correctly. And the only way that you can make sure that you're priced correctly is to include labor for yourself, to make sure that you know that if I'm paying myself a fair wage of $20 an hour, then I need to include that in my cost of goods. So many of you are not doing that, and it's causing you to have bad pricing, which you recall we talked about earlier. So a lot of things going on. Hopefully some of this has helped those of you out that are trying to understand cost of goods better. And if you want to make sure that you continue to learn about different business numbers, make sure you hit subscribe, and make sure you tune in. And if you want to dive in even deeper, don't forget, I do have the Know Your Business Numbers course below to help you out. And with that, I will be back next week with some more tips on your business numbers. Have a good day. Bye for now.